I realized, having recorded my audio course, is that I basically had the bones for my second book, although it massively expedited the process of that being the case.
Welcome, everybody, to another case study episode of Launch Your Private Podcast. Today, we have Hello Audio user Iona Holloway. She is the creator of the Brave One Method and the founder of the Brave Thing. We're really excited to talk to her about how she's using private podcasts because it involves a book, and we haven't interviewed yet anyone who uses it for a book. So we're super excited to talk about what she's using the podcast for. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So give us a little background on you, your business, how you make the dollars, what you're selling, just so people can get an idea of where you thought the private podcast fit in.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Iona and I'm the founder of Brave Thing. I'm a keynote speaker and I'm a consultant for companies that are looking to get braver women in their companies and retain, advance, and inspire women. So I have that B2B side of Brave Thing. And then I also have my B2C side, which is the older, the part I've been doing longer. And it is a personal development company based around the idea that someone in your life needs a braver version of you to exist. The reason that I got into the work that I now do is that at 29, I was what I would call a highly functioning and visibly struggling person. So I had a very successful career. You may hear from my accent, I'm from Scotland. But I moved to the US when I was 20 because I was recruited to play Division One field hockey at Syracuse University.
Wow.
And I was an All-American athlete, collected all the glitter, transitioned into a successful corporate career. But from the age of 11, I've been struggling with disordered eating, body image issues, what I guess you would call clinical depression. And I was that very highly functioning, invisibly struggling person. And on the sort of eve of my 29th birthday, I got a call from my brother, Andrew, in Scotland, and he told me I was going to be an aunt. I just knew it was going to be a girl. And that was very much my sliding door moment and the day that I chose a different future. And I didn't want to go like the traditional medical route towards remembering who I was. So I got into a lot of personal development, breathwork, all that sort of embodied healing, identity work, all that kind of stuff. And found one, it changed my life. I just thought I was going to be a sad person for my whole life. And it turned out that wasn't true. And actually there was a whole load more on the other side of that brave thing. And so that was the foundation for my business. And I now have coached just thousands of women. I'm like primarily women, although I have dudes hang out with me too. We tend to get on really well. But primarily working with a lot of very successful women who are ambitious, women who are driven, but who often their self-image is not matching up with that external presentation of themselves. And we do the work to sew the soul back together so that you can actually be happy, successful, and also feel joy and be proud of who you are and enjoy your life. And that's the focus of Brave Thing.
Such important work. And I know when you were talking and originally you said, but you consult for companies. And I was like, okay, we got to find out who's investing in in this work, because we need to support those companies. Because a company that recognizes the value of this work is really, really important. So that's
true.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
I found that sweet spot with companies where there's a lot of people having conversations about mental health and about burnout, and that's fine. But it's not the focus for my work. My work is really around how do we get braver women in the room? So what is our self-image? How are we seeing ourselves? How is the way that we are talking to ourselves? How can I step into this room? Like, I'm not a massively extroverted person, and I wouldn't force anyone to be who isn't. I'm actually quite introverted. I can still be the bravest person in this room if I am maximizing and comfortable in who I am and able to really enjoy who I am. I can be the bravest woman in the room, just like someone who's really extroverted can be the bravest woman in the room, someone who's softly spoken, someone who's really loud and in your face. Like there's so many different versions of bravery. And my job is not to make any women act a particular way. It's really to remember who you are, see the value of it, and then bring that to your life, your work, and your relationships. So I love working with companies who are not just looking to have conversations about, oh, it's okay to be vulnerable or it's okay
The
to
check
have
the box kind of
emotions,
stuff that's
right?
happening right now.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really about advancement of women and how we see ourselves so that we are not just even in the sense of promoting into leadership, but living their version of a brave life, whatever that looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're basically reframing. Yeah, definitely considered like mental health. You can hear the mental health and like what work you
Sure.
do, but you reframe it and it's like a very empowering, confidence based, which I think it's great. We're talking about mental health and vulnerability now in public, but yeah, the
Yes.
energy that these two different ways of presenting essentially similar things. Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important. And to Nora's point, like when a company recognizes it in that respect, that's huge and
Mhm.
a very different thing going on than checking the mental health box that they for folks. So love that.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's deep work. That's important work.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you knew at some point that private podcasting needed to be a part of this. So I'm curious where that entered into your awareness and like
Yep.
what you kind of initially were like, this is, I could see the, anything around mental health, like audio is great. And
Mhm.
usually when we have these conversations with folks that do mindset or working on empowerment or self-confidence, stuff like that, there it's like, oh yeah, audio is a no-brainer. So I'm curious, like where you heard about private podcasting and then like how you looked at it as it could help your business.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of different ways that it's kind of entered into the fabric of how I run my company. So the first thing is that from the outset, I wasn't just getting on calls and talking to women. There was very much a practice component of being braver. And I am a trained breathwork facilitator. And so the practice of breathwork and awareness and looking inside is a huge part of all of my programs and always has been. And of course, when I started, what that looked was me, and it still is this sometimes, me recording audios on my phone and uploading them into Google Drive, and they're just hanging out there as an MP3. And it's fine and it worked for when I was working with 10 like high ticket private clients. But that approach obviously doesn't scale once you're creating programs or you're wanting to package and sell your offers in more of that productized way. So I was using audio from the outset, taping it together with a shoestring and a bit of tape, but just recognizing there had to be another way of delivering this kind of content to my clients so that they can easily pull it up and say, oh, this is the practice that I'm doing, or this is what I need to be listening to. And especially when I was designing the Brave one, which is like sort of signature course, and it functions as a 5-day live intensive, but there's an audio course component that you get access to whenever you join the
Cool.
program. And then every quarter, we do a live 5-day intensive where it's more like it's live facilitation, longer breathwork sessions, coaching live. But I recorded the whole curriculum beforehand because, and again, this is all about knowing your audience. Like my audience they're really smart, they're really switched on, they're also too in their head. I'm too much in front of their laptops. And one of my big things about that I try to remind my clients is that you have a large cranium, but you are a creature first and a human second. And so I need you to, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear here, but like I need you to go the fuck outside and be out in the be out in the world, breathe. And so audio is beautiful for that. Like it serves such a great purpose. So I'm like one of the steps of the Brave One method, which I teach, the first step is put your head in the fridge. And so there's different ways to put your head in the fridge, one of them being breath work, one of them being some embodiment practices that I teach. And then the other one is go outside. And so just being able to walk the talk of the program and actually get women outside more, just being creatures instead of heads on sticks, is part of the program. And so it makes it makes perfect sense. So private podcasting has created a place where I can have all my breathwork sessions, short or long, in one place so people can easily access them. And then it also took the burden of teaching live stuff that didn't need to be taught live and creating a really streamlined curriculum around that so that people can be listening and re-listening to that as they're doing the live intensive. And then, and this is the part that I was also excited to talk about, is that I realized that in recording an audio first course, I wrote my first book during lockdown, Ghost Why Perfect Women Shrink. And what I realized, having recorded my audio course, is that I basically had the bones for my second book, although it massively expedited the process of that being the case. And so I know that a lot of business owners, because, I move in these circles too, there's so many people that talk about wanting to write a book and they have no idea where to start. And I'm not going to say that I'm the person that can help you actually do that process, but I've found that if you can record a really streamlined and punchy audio course, you have the basis, basically the table of contents and content outline for an amazing book.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a lot
I
there.
know.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Well, there's a couple of things. I love how you painted that picture at the beginning of where you were, because that is where we were also
Yeah.
in business around the same time. The technology just wasn't matching with like how people were accessing information. And so, yeah, like you're the perfect example of like why we built this product. It's like MP3 sitting in Google Drive or in Dropbox just was not working, not the vibe we wanted. So I love that you noticed that. And yeah, your work definitely just fits right in. When we interview people that are in this kind of space, it's just, yeah, of course I'm going to do audio. Of course I want it to be immersive. Of course, like that concept of you wanting people to go outside, matching your values, and like, I'm going to give you the material that like gives you no excuses for doing that. That's everything. So when you kind of walk the talk, that also helps your clients like probably do the work, right? And actually go through the process and the transformation that you're trying to get them. And that makes me so happy that we were able to help you with that. So those are some of the first things I wanted to say about your initial way of using the product. And then, yeah, I think we should dive in because we haven't actually had some. And I think it's Andrea Crowder who came on and said, I accidentally wrote a book using
Yeah.
audio. We didn't do an episode with her on it, but I'd love to hear. You're not teaching people how to do this, everyone listening, right? She's not trying to
Yeah.
sign you up for anything around this, but we want to hear like how you approach this and maybe like how you organized yourself in order to do this, because I think that there, like you said, a lot of people that want to write a book, sitting and looking at a, blinking cursor is the most daunting thing. Audio is such a great starting point for that. And so, yeah, let's break down how you approached this. And especially too, I also want to bring up this was your second book. So let's also contrast it with writing the first book as well. So yeah, give us a little bit of that inside
Sure.
look.
Yeah. So, this is my second book. I wrote my first book in lockdown. And at the time, I partnered with a company called Scribe. Or I shouldn't say I partnered with them.
Yeah.
I hired Scribe and did their guided. Okay, cool. And did their guided author program, which is essentially they give you the structure or the method for how to write a book. And then you follow that structure and method. And then you get support calls and so on and so on and so forth. And then you're responsible for writing the manuscript. They appraise it, send you back edits. You do those edits. And then they take charge of the publishing process. And so during that time, I learned a lot about book writing, which now I realize a lot of people don't really know, which is that you do really need to have the positioning, at least you need to hit some kind of target and recognize that at least if you're speaking to one person, you will write a book that's compelling for one person. You will catch other people in the ripple. So there is a positioning component to it. But the thing that I found so fascinating I was a total newbie business owner when I wrote my book. I didn't actually have a bank card at the time that was a business bank card. And I was in this room with 20, 25 other founders, very successful business people. And they, by the end of 6 months, I was, I think, one of 3 people who'd actually written their manuscript. And it was because I did what I was told. And what they told us to do was write 250 words a day. That's it. Commit to that bare minimum. And then also the quality standard for those words is vomit. So you're not writing 250 good words. You're writing 250, you're vomiting 250 words. And if you do that consistently and often enough, you will have a book. And that turned out to be the case for me. Of course, I'm not going to say I wasn't. I was very disciplined. I followed through. I made sure that every single day I was there writing, and I always say to my clients, you want to get brave around anything, all you have to do is repeat identity and behavior, combine those 2 things, you will have a braver identity. And so, that is what I did. And also, that book was me starting from scratch. I didn't have a methodology. I'd never taught really before. It was very memoir based, and it was a very ghost, like Every Own Shrink is a very particular style of book. And then it came out, it did really well. And then it really built the foundation for my business. And then a couple of years passed, and I've now coached like thousands of people at this point. I've facilitated a lot of workshops. I'm getting hired to speak on stages. I have this course that I teach, which is my intellectual property. And it was like really feeling like it was time to write a book. And I realized that when I was revisiting the scribe method, they talked about this other form of writing books, which wasn't just sitting down and writing, it was scribing. And by that, I mean just like speaking your book out loud and then writing around it. And I realized, like, not inadvertently, but I'd done that part with the course. I'd done that part when I was recording an audio first podcast. It wasn't polished in the way that writing was. It didn't need to be, but it had still done really substantial positioning and outlining of that content so that it was streamlined, snappable, all the stuff that we do to make our content actually useful for people. And I realized that I had used Hello Audio to scribe my second book. And it was really exciting for me as well, because in June, I found out that I'm pregnant, and I'm having a baby girl in February. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And I knew I knew how much work it was to write a book. And then I also suddenly had this, I would say artificial deadline, but I had some forced
Oh, I know it
priority
well.
around getting stuff done. And
Thing is going to happen.
yeah, like she's coming. And I also, to go back to sort of the foundation of Brave thing, the birth of my niece was such a pivotal moment in my life. And it kind of felt the same when I found out I was going to be a mum to a girl. I don't ever want my daughter to be the reason why I didn't write my second book, or, oh, I don't have time for this anymore. And I never want her to be a reason why I didn't, only inspiration for why I did. And so I had a really rough first trimester, as I know a lot of people do. So I thought I was going to start using what I created in Hello Audio for my book back in June. But as it turned out, I started working on it 3 weeks ago. And it's crazy because what took me like months, months of work up front for my first book, I already have I actually already have, I think, 35,000 words written,
Wow.
which is a book. It's not in book form, but the bones are there. And if I was giving anyone just encouragement, you have so much already there. You've already cut out a huge component which can have so much resistance attached to it. Is it positioned? How do I outline? Blah, 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 blah. You've done so much groundwork. You're already sitting on a gold mine of content. And probably what you just need is maybe, again, it's not me because I don't do this, although I can thoroughly recommend a couple of people in my network who do help people write books. If that's of interest, please just let me know. But you're so much closer than you think you are to being a best-selling author.
Okay, whoa. I'm having like a weird moment because I came to this being like, oh, da, 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 writing a book using like Hello Audio. And then you talked about writing your first book. And I actually was just talking about my dissertation, like literally right before this call, and how disciplined I had to be during that process. And like,
Mhm.
it was actually this is very rare for any academic. It's actually very sad that it's like this, but it's very rare for an academic to say that their dissertation was a great time. It's usually the opposite. It's
Yeah.
usually like a bunch of like grief and shame, and it's terrible. In academia, I have like thoughts on that. I was very supported and I loved it. Okay.
Mhm.
And it was like 90,000 words or something like that.
Mhm.
And I had to show up every morning. I remember 5 a.m., like sun is rising because I was also teaching. I had, Emma at my feet and I just did it. I just like kept going. And this is all writing, like your process, like 250 words, put in the time. And I had a
Yep.
coach and then I had my academic advisor. They were all my team. It was great. It was beautiful. I love that document. I love it. And fast forward to today. No, fast forward to Nora and I actually went through a book program ourselves. We actually both
We
have
did. We
books that
totally
we
did.
haven't released. So I know it's funny because I look at that and I'm sitting here thinking, and I was like, shit, I should revisit that because, especially as you're saying, you already have a lot more than you think. What I didn't realize, I did exactly what you did. Nora, I don't know if we ever talked about this, but I took my Build a Better Beta program and I
Mhm.
transcribed it when I was writing that book. And so it became the bones of the book. I did not connect that from like a Hello Audio perspective and a course teacher perspective until this
Mhm.
moment. So, fascinating. And as I'm sitting here thinking about this, that felt really good. So Nora and I and a couple other people I know went through this program, and it's to write a book really quickly. I don't even remember. It was like days that you like a week, right? Is that the like writing process is like a week? But then the editing and the whole phases were like different, but the actual sitting and writing I it's all a blur
It
now.
was
This is
Yeah.
like
relatively quick.
2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I took those transcripts and then I wrote around it,
Yeah.
100%, like intros and all this stuff with help of somebody with structure and like, table of contents and stuff. But this is
Yep.
actually making me, this conversation with you is making me think about. So I never released that book officially, various reasons. One
Mhm.
of them being the direction of my business. And
Right.
I was
Hello
trying to
Audio was
pull in
really the
leads.
big
It was Hello
reason.
Audio is like the main reason. But I think there's something there because what I want people to hear listening this, I guess, is where I'm going with this, is as a business owner, if you're like me and Nora, Iona, we've been doing this for a little while. We've created a lot of things. We've had a
Mhm.
lot of products, maybe that haven't even seen the light of day, books,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
which is cool. And it doesn't mean all of them are of amazing value, but like you're not starting with nothing. And I
Yes.
think what like a blank blinking cursor on a white page looks like and feels is literally nothing. But the experiences, the other content you've created, even the social media posts, if you're like a regular poster, which you're better than me at that, there's those the type of people out there. You have stuff. And
Mhm.
now it's just instead of it being like, can I get discipline? Because that first way of writing, it is discipline with like heavy dose of motivation and reason for doing it every day. But it doesn't have to be that hard. And what I'm hearing from you is like, just show up and do it and don't make it bigger than it needs to be. And like using a tool like Hello Audio or using audio as a medium, as a
Yeah.
way for you to release that, as a way to start so you don't have nothing. There's some great transcribing tools. I know Nora, you use that Audio Note one,
Oh
voice
yeah.
notes.
Audio
There's like
pen.
other tools
Yeah.
that aren't Hello Audio that will catch your content, but then like transcribe it so it makes it a lot more legible. It actually sounds like a book potentially the first time coming out. That could be a great tool to help you do this kind of stuff. So
Yep.
anyways, I'm kind of rambling here, but I'm like collecting a bunch of stuff of my own experience. We're like, oh shit, I need to get back in that mindset of I have a lot of stuff. And maybe there is something here for me that's more encompassing of Hello Audio and where I've taken it. But that book could actually be the foundation for it. And now, Lindsay, let's just speak it. Like, let's not make it a dissertation. I do not have to have
Right.
that level of focus that I had
Right.
back then. So,
Right.
anywho,
Exactly. And that's exactly what I did. I transcribed my entire audio course. And there is definitely like a different style of writing. I mean, a dissertation is a very particular thing.
Yeah.
Spoken word is its own, just like beautiful beast. And then I've learned that
And
even more.
courses too are its own
Right.
thing, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think what you said, which is the key insight, is like the horror of the blank page. Like
Mhm.
you don't have to be in that hell. You don't. Because when you transcribe audio, what I find is that I don't go in and edit what I've written. I write to what I've written. So I
Mm.
have it kind of there as reference.
Mhm.
And then just like my style of writing is a bit different than the way that I speak. And I think it is
100%.
for most people, although they're closer than you think.
Mhm.
If you're trying to write something that people actually want to read, it's spoken and written is closer than you think. But just having it there is kind of it basically is the vomit draft. Like it's the vomit draft that
Mhm.
I'm now writing and refining. And yeah, I think the combination of not feeling like you're starting from nothing is such a boost on top of a project that like books, regardless of whether you're on an expedited timeline or course or not, are monster projects. And so anything that you can do to make the day to day sit down and work on this thing a little bit easier. I just posted a reel about this yesterday. Not one for time blocking. It doesn't really work for me.
Same.
But I do this thing called brave blocking, and it's 2 hours. The best 2 hours of my day are the first 2 hours of my day after I work out and have a snack and all that kind of thing. And whatever I face most resistance around, fear around, or whatever requires the most bravery gets done during the brave block. And so, for the next however many months I've got left, 14 weeks, I think, until my daughter comes, like the book is in there. And it just feels like Hello Audio has been just like a cool side pilot friend for moving forward this project that I had wanted to do for a while. Had both like the blessing and the curse of having written a book before and knowing what it took, it's great. And it's also horrifying because naivety can be a mother of a lot of brave things. And then you have to deal with it as you're building it. But Hello Audio like having the audio course made it feel like this is something that I can do on this, what does feel like a crazy short timeline for me. And like, that's why I wanted to share it. Because it's cool to realize that you have been building something without even realizing that you have been. And I think so much of entrepreneurship is being able, I don't love the word exploit, but it is that like exploit the work that's already been done. And if you've already got a course and have already written and given talks, you have a book. And it's just actually being able to move through the process of making that real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, it's like as women, we tend not to recognize the things that we have accomplished. We've talked
Of
about this
course.
before. It's very hard
Yep.
for us to be like, we've done this and we've done this.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, recognize what you've done in your business. It's probably more than you think or that you gave yourself credit for recently.
Mhm.
And then exploit is an interesting word because exploit yourself like
Exploit yourself.
exploiting
Yeah.
someone else, but
Your own
like you're
brilliance.
doing your own
Yeah.
things. And yeah, I love that because your whole thing too is for women, right? Like showing up braver, being
Mhm.
brave and doing the book, being brave and like looking at your content and saying, this is good. There's actually great stuff here that other people deserve and need
Yep.
and want to hear or, read or listen to. So I love that. It definitely fits with everything you're talking about too, for sure.
The other thing that I learned when I wrote my first book, it was a memoir, and it's like a very different style of book. Whereas this one is, it's more of it's a consolidation of my intellectual property and the method that I have taught and is proven and is mine. And because of that, the content, it's like it makes so much sense that there would be added bonuses that a reader could be reading the book, but then be directed to audio resources. And so I'm already so aware that there's going to be a private podcast component
That
to,
was my next question.
yeah,
Okay, keep
Yeah.
going. Keep
to the
going.
book. So which is not, it's not the audio version of the book because that will exist in its own world. But like I was saying earlier, breathwork, visualization, self-image, and internal work is such a huge part of the method that I teach. And I know what translates written and I know what has to be experienced. And so rather than wasting a lot of time writing down how to do a visualization, I've always been just mind blown by books that have long visualizations written down. And
Oh
then I'm
my
like,
gosh.
you do know people's eyes are open, and then you do know people's eyes are open. So, and again, it could be done in audio, but I think it's better served when it's pulled out. So there'll be, I haven't formalized exactly what it's going to look like, but there will be, because there's also, I want people to experience the course as well. And that's obviously a paid product, but there's absolutely no reason why you can't have like a beautiful little bonus resource that will be audio only, that will have perhaps some of my signature breathwork methods or visualizations in it to support and deepen the experience for readers too. So having had it was one of those things that I didn't even have the capacity to conceive of when I was writing my first book. Because it was just like, this book existing is a monumental miracle. And now, like, second time around, and also writing a book that's a bit more strategic and method based, it just makes so much sense. So there would be a private podcast component for readers to get deeper into some of the more practical elements that I teach.
I love
Nora, this
that.
is like a new avatar for us. Like all the
It,
books I've read that have like what? Like not have a
I
link or
know.
a website click for the
Yeah.
meditation.
Think
Yeah.
all
So
those
good.
extra resources, all those extra things that you go and you're like, whatever book.com, and then you
Mhm.
get all your free resources. The private podcast isn't just for creating the audiobook version, but it
Mhm.
is if you want it, if you don't want to go exclusive on something like Audible. But the resources to have in audio form
So much
not
easier to
only lets, I
consume than
mean,
a
so much
course
easier
platform.
to
I know. I
create, to
just signed up for a book
consume.
that has a whole course platform. I'm like, I'm logged in. I don't know.
Right.
Like,
How many do we
is it
have
a
sitting in our
workshop? I'm not going to watch
inboxes?
it. Yeah.
All those pre-launch books and things like that. There is one thing I do want to add for anyone that's listening, because this is important. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't have a course yet, maybe you're a service provider, you do one-on-one, you're a consultant, maybe you have a day job, right? I want to really emphasize and highlight the fact that you can still use audio in your journey as a way to capture either your experiences. I know when I worked at corporate, I was having conversations with myself to work and on the way home, right? And you learn so much. Like when I used to go through mergers and acquisitions in corporate, right? And every day is an adventure and you learn things as you go. And that's something you can document your experience, on the way home from work, or something that's just so much easier to capture. And even, one-on-one coaching calls. And Lindsay, you talked about your experience when we went through that book writing program together and taking your existing course. And I took existing coaching calls. I took existing
Mhm.
consulting engagements as my foundation for how I built the bones of how I wanted to structure that, because I didn't have a specific pre-built course around what I was trying to do, but I had a bunch of consulting engagements that I had done. And so really taking all the lessons learned and all those types of resources. So if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, I don't have a course, there's a lot of other ways to leverage audio to make it a lot easier to bridge the gap from where you are, to getting that book outline and ultimately that book done. So lots of different ways. And I would even argue probably a lot easier than sitting down and going through that process and writing, because
Mhm.
that just takes a lot longer than I think most people realize for a lot
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
it's funny because we talk a lot more than we write, like as humans,
Right.
just in
yeah.
general. So I also like to bring that up because I think that's why some people really like podcasting, right? Like it's like, oh, I can show up and talk, or they like coaching. And a writer will tell you like writing it feels very different than speaking, but that's the cool commonality that we all have we all know how to talk, and like we all know how to convey information. We all know how to convince a toddler to eat the dang food that's sitting in front of the flips I had to do this morning, let me tell you. So we all know how to like use language, right? To get people to do stuff or to teach something or to communicate. And I think we put this I'm not a good writer band over ourselves that like may come from like school trauma, like may come,
Mhm.
who knows, right? But most of us have that. And if you've ever told yourself, I'm not a good writer, AKA I can't write a book, I think like this hopefully can reframe you to be like, you know how to talk and you know how to, especially if you're running a business, you're probably communicating on some level. And so that like innate humanness of just communication, we have it. Let go of the teacher in fifth grade who told you didn't know how to write the 5 paragraph essay. No one wants that anymore, anyways, right? And now we have all these tools at our disposal. I'm also thinking stuff with AI. Iona,
Oh,
you
yeah.
said our course that we create, the things we speak out, it's less editing than you think, but there's definitely editing. That's how I
Oh,
feel about
yeah.
AI, right? It's like,
Yes.
gotta
Yeah.
edit it, but it's actually
Mhm.
not that hard. And so we have these amazing tools that can get us moving. And I think the getting us moving, you as a coach know this, Iona, it's like taking action is progress. So by
Yeah.
doing nothing and telling yourself you can't write, you're preventing that book from being out here. But if you can get on and talk into a microphone and use some tools to maybe help you with that process, now you're taking action and you're starting to see yourself as a writer. It might not, right? It might not be the
Right.
same method you thought where you're
Yep.
looking up a thesaurus or you're writing an answer for an essay, right, in a blue book. There's these traumatizing things that we all have from our past. Let's like wash that away and be like, how do we already have everything we need in our heads? It's not outside of us. And there are these tools that can help us. There are these methods that we can use that can help us get that information out
Yeah, and I'll say even as someone who I love writing, I actually like my one of my undergraduate degrees is in magazine journalism. And
there. Cool.
so I wouldn't call myself a writer. I was actually had an interesting conversation with
That's
someone about
interesting.
this
Yeah.
recently. So I call myself an author before I would call myself a writer because I think those are actually different identities because you can be one and maybe not quite identify with the other. But I want to be a writer. I'm an author. I want to be a writer. I would like to see myself in that way. And just even in that sense, that can be expectation and
Yeah, for sure.
pressure on how good this writing has to
Yep.
be right now. And so that was something that I want to say fight myself, but that's how resistance has shown up for me when conceiving of writing the second book. It's like, oh, but I want to be like, I would really like to feel like I'm a writer now. And oh my God, like the pressure of that when you're sitting down to write every day, it doesn't help because, the pressure of perfect and all this kind of stuff just adds itself to the experience. And so it's just being able to have already basically written it. And now I'm more in this editing curation mode. It's just a different way of relating to what it is that you're writing. But I love what you said too. It's like some people don't think of themselves as writers. Maybe whether you do or don't or want to be, it's a different story. But just because you're not a writer doesn't mean that you can't be an author.
It's the quotable right there.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
it. I love that. Yeah, that's so true. For me too, once you get to that curation stage, when you're making connections and you're just thinking about going deeper or how to explain a concept and maybe you're leading into a story, that's where I enjoy that creative part of the process, I think, a lot more personally. And I think that's also where audio really helped me going through that as I would recall a story or something that had happened or a project that I had completed. And I could just talk out that story. And then, that's a great story to put into the book. And so
Mhm.
it may not, sometimes when you're recording things, it's not just all the intellectual property pieces, but sometimes it is just those stories that make the book come to life or make this, make it that concept come to life for someone or make it make sense, right, in a different way. And I really, it's just something about being able to focus more on that piece of it
Mhm.
that feels really good for me personally. And I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure not everyone enjoys the like, okay, chapters and outlines and structure. Like sometimes it's just, you get to that higher level and it is a lot more fun. So that's really cool.
Awesome. So, yeah, I feel like we got a good picture of the way that audio was used to help you do this. Yeah, and your daughter's on her way. She's coming in a
It's
few months. We'll
exciting.
go with months instead of weeks. Just to,
Yeah.
I know it's a pregnancy, you count down every week, but you got a little bit of time, right?
Mhm.
And maybe hopefully those holidays are good to you and you can like really hunker down. But So thinking about that, yeah, is there anything else you would give advice that we haven't covered for someone who's maybe thinking of exploring this? Maybe like a starting point or something like that that we haven't kind of discussed?
One thing that you mentioned, like the use of I did want to pull out because this was very helpful for me and I didn't realize that it would be, which was I transcribed my content and then I put it into ChatGPT or whatever it is that you would use. And I asked it to do what I call a reverse outline. So it's basically use this content that I have written here in more of maybe it's not stream of consciousness because it was recorded intentionally, but it's still in that more like spoken word audio form. Can you basically write what you think the structure of this chapter should be?
Oh, that's
And
good. We're
it
getting
was really,
prompts on this call. What?
yeah, it was really helpful because to Nora's point, it would reverse outline it for me. And then as someone who I do speak for a living and I give keynotes, I could see this is missing a story.
Mm,
Like this is missing concrete examples. The concepts are here, but it is Swiss cheese right now and I
yeah.
need to fill in the hole. And so that was a really, I wasn't putting that audio content in assuming that the chats already existed in its finalized form, but it gave me really good emphasis or reinforcement that the bones are here and some of the meat's missing. So we need to add that in. And so it actually allowed me to, it's called a reverse outline. So basically outline the structure of the chapter. And so now when I'm writing it, sometimes the chapter has a chunk that I can pull in and write from the audio course, or there's a bit is you need to write the story about how you dislocated your knee last year throwing a ball for your dog who doesn't even retrieve balls. And it's a metaphor for bravery. Surprise.
Very
And
specific.
I think so. I wrote it this morning. Like literally this is
Got
what
it.
I was doing this morning. I was like, I'm filling in the hole that is the story of how never mind. But that's so that was a really helpful tool. And again, I'll say this as someone who isn't in the curve of early adopter with
Sure.
technology. I'm not necessarily on the bleeding edge of it. And I sometimes, especially when I've done the process before without AI, so I'm just like, I will rise above and not use it. But it was
Mm.
incredibly helpful for me with this, with creating a bit of structure around the chunks of audio transcripts that I had. So just another wee tip.
Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. AI is going to be better at synthesizing loads of data than any human being
Yep.
is going to be. And if we are not using that to our advantage, I literally was just saying this to Derek yesterday. Man, a lot of dissertation talk in the last like 2 days. There's something there. I don't know what it is. There's a message there. We were talking about it at lunch. I was like, man, how are qualitative researchers, they must be
Yeah.
loving their life because my dissertation was purely qualitative.
Mm.
And I had to listen to hours of interview and then
Hmm.
code all the phrases, like whatever. And I'm just like, if I had AI to help
Yeah.
with that, and that must be completely reshaping that level of work at grad school. And I'm just like, could only imagine what they're doing. And obviously, I did this in like, I mean, now it's been like 2009. So yeah, it's been a hot second. All that to be said, yeah, let's acknowledge what a robot is going to be good at. It replacing us is I think still a different question. But this idea that you guys, it's going to make it faster. It's going to catch things that is going to take us
Hmm.
longer to get at, and possibly things we might even miss. But at the end of the
Right.
day, you're the expert that still oversees what they pulled out. And that's like the important piece. Like my husband is translating, his grandmother has letters from Germany in German from her mom and her mom's mom and all this stuff. And no one's really translated it. He's totally using ChatGPT and some language models to do it. But not only that, like fine, like language translation, that's really helpful. But actually, he put in all these letters and is like, what's the family tree? Who's this person? How are they related to this person? And so, as an individual who speaks English, you're looking at all this data and you're like not only trying to read language that doesn't quite translate really well, but you also have all these very German sounding names and you're not sure. And it's a person who wrote these letters a long time ago. So they're not telling the person reading the whole structure. It pulled it out and said, based on what I can infer, like this woman has 3 kids, 2 of them are unnamed, like one of them is named this, like full tree outline. And it's just like mind blown. Like the amount of effort that would have taken him or someone in his family to do. That's how we use these tools. And to extrapolate further from a like writing perspective, if you plug in a course or something like that into ChatGPT and have it see some patterns and stuff, like this is some stuff that I'm like, I'm getting inspired to go back into my own stuff, right? That take that audio, plug it in and see like with a different angle, like how can I use Build a Better Beta content to teach Hello Audio? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be its exact intent, right? Like back then when I had that course, the intent of the course was to help people launch a course, right? And your intent of your product was to do something different than you're doing with your book. I'm assuming there's obviously overlap, but like talking with ChatGPT where it can take in hours of data, hundreds of thousands of words and help you see lines, you are the one that holds the information that ChatGPT does not hold. It only holds what you gave it, right? You have all this other stuff that you're waiting for those right words or connections that you didn't see that then is going to spark the thing to go be created. Damn. I didn't think we'd get on this call and I'd be like, I need to go through my stuff. I think I need to go through my dissertation. There's things here that like, well, you've inspired me today. I'm not going to lie.
No, I'm glad. Same. I just have to wait till marching band season is over. I can't do anything until it's over. But yes, I love this. I'm so glad you shared this with us. I'm so glad you took the time to document the process. And I love that Hello Audio is helping you through it. That's really cool too.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Definitely.
And it's you mentioned, Nora, about recording audio sort of around your experience. And that's something that I'm doing as part of, well, it's funny when you build a brand around bravery, it's like, and everything anyone does to build a business requires a degree of bravery. And so I'm using it to write the book. I'm using Hollow Audio to write the book. I'm planning to have a little satellite experience, like with visualizations in it for readers. But I'm also documenting the process of writing the book because that's a brave thing as well. I haven't started yet, but I am planning on starting to record some audio around that too. So if anyone wants to follow along with that journey, the best way is just to get on my mailing list. So bravething.co/7, so SEVEN. And that gets you like a 7-minute, one of my kind of classic 7-minute breathwork visualizations. But then you'll be, the first to know when I start releasing that stuff too. So if your curiosity is piqued, but you also kind of want to get a bit of a behind the scenes of how I'm continuing to use it, then that would be the place to find me.
Awesome. This is a use case I've always wanted someone to do.
Yes.
Like you're writing a book, you have all these whatever, like document that journey of writing the book because you and I both know it's really difficult to sit down and write. And so you have in your brain what you're thinking, what you're worried about, and how you overcome that stuff and the mindset stuff. I mean, that's really cool insight for sure.
No way. Speaking of resistance, like no way am I going to go through what it takes to write a book and then also sit down and write about writing the book. It's like, it's just not going to happen. And so audio removes that friction. Yeah, it has to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is great pre-launch content too, right? Like you could release this like before the book's coming out or that's really great.
Yeah.
Oh, and cool for your daughter, by the way, who's like a co-creator in this process.
I know. I know. It does feel like it's funny, like sometimes when I'm writing and she kicks me, it's like, get back to writing. Come on, keep it.
That'll never end. That continues.
Yeah. I dedicated my first book to my niece Evie because she was the catalyst for it existing. And I have another niece, Ruby, so I owe her one. But yeah, this book is definitely for my daughter.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh my goodness. All right. Before I forget, because I'm going to forget, we need to ask you this final question that we ask all of our guests. And that is, if there was a private podcast with your life's musings, what would it be called?
Oh gosh.
I know.
I guess it would be She Did the Brave Thing.
No, that's good.
Yeah, I thought I knew you were going to have to incorporate the word brave. I wasn't sure if you're going to go with the brave block because I did really like that concept of your
Same.
on your
It's
schedule.
way better than
That
Eat the
was
Frog.
so
Way
much
better.
better. And like
Yeah.
eat the frog. Ew. Like
No.
really? That's gross. The visual there is just not aligned. But yeah, I love the way you approach all of this. Like that is just there's something so powerful and empowering about it. Really, really cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. We'll have you back
Yeah.
once the book is out. We'll got the
I would love
other
that.
podcasts out. Yeah.
I would love
Your-
that because then perhaps
Your
I can talk.
daughter attached.
Yeah,
Great.
right. She'll be at my feet, and then perhaps we could talk about what that like satellite audio component ended up being as part
Let's
of the
do
book.
it.
I would
It
love
is
that.
more
Awesome.
deadlines for you. More.
Yeah, right.
Let's
Yep.
do it.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Iona,
both.
so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
And there you have it, audio heads. Another episode of Launch Your Private Podcast is in the books. I hope you're leaving today feeling even more ready to amplify your voice and connect with your audience in meaningful ways. The adventure continues in our next episode with even more insights, strategies, and inspiration to help you along your own private podcasting journey. Of course, make sure to check out helloaudio.fm to start your own private podcast. And remember, you've got amazing content that needs to be heard. So let's turn the volume up. Until next time.